think that's as near as 10 o'clock. Okay. Good morning, everybody. As you noticed, we had a quick walk round the chair. Always good to have a plan B. Welcome to the meeting of the Strategic Licensing Committee. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public will be able to view the meeting using the link on the agenda. So apologies then, please. Or do I read them out?
I can read them, that's fine. So we've had apologies from Councillor David Evans, Pam Mosley, and we should have Caroline Bagnall as sub, and Roy Aldcroft.
Yeah, can't make it. Thank you. Item 2, minutes of the last meeting. Taking everybody's had a chance to look at them. I've got a proposal.
I'm happy to propose we accept
The second. Councillor Towers, the second. So that's that then. So item 3, public question times. Now it says here no public questions. Has it changed from that?
No,
Okay. Thank you. Item 4, disclosable pecuniary interests. Members are reminded that they must declare their disclosable pecuniary interests and other registrable or non-registrable interests in any matter being considered at the meeting as set out in Appendix B, the Members' Code of Conduct, and consider if they should leave the room prior to the item being considered. Further advice can be sought from the monitoring officer in advance of the meeting. No? Okay. Item 5, we move to the Gambling Act 2005 policy statement 2025 to 28. Andy, I understand you're going to give a report on that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Gambling Act policy statement is a legal requirement for the local authority to have and review every 3 years. This is a process that we've been doing. If you remember, we brought this the proposed policy or the draft policy to an earlier committee in the year. We've been out to consultation. We've come back from consultation, made the amendments as necessary, and brought it back to this committee for agreeing with, and happy with, or to ask any questions of the information that's in there. And there's an onward delegation for this particular report and the policy to go to full council. So if it's agreed today as it stands, I'll be presenting this to the next full council, which is in December, for official sign off to come into effect on the 31st of January 2025. So I'm open to any questions if anyone has any about the report and the policy document itself.
No, I don't think so. So the recommendations, there's 2 recommendations, 3.1 and 3.2. We're happy to agree with those, proposer. So those 2. Recommended then, was agreed? Yeah. Thank you. So we'll go on to item 6, which is a review for the request for a review of the Hackney Carriage Fare Card. Again, Mandy's going to do a report on that.
Thank you, Chair. The same with this particular one. I brought this request, which came from the trade originally, to the committee earlier on in the year to ask for it to go out to consultation. We've been out to consultation with members of the public and members of the trade. I've presented within the report and the appendices the responses that we had. We've had to take a practical sort of view on the revision of the fees in here and be reasonable to members of the public and obviously the Hackney drivers themselves. We haven't agreed with every request that's been made by members of the trade. We've tried to draw some sort of middle ground without making them out of pocket, so supporting them with the sort of cost of living, but without putting the fees too high to price them out of the market. When you offset them against the private hire trade, we have no control of the private hire trade fees, but we're required to set the Hackney carriages. So we have to draw a balance between the two. So again, the report presents all of that information. And if you're happy for this to be signed off as proposed, it will come into effect on the 17th of October.
Anybody got any views on that, Councillor Virgin?
Thank you, Joe. Just the fact it's taken 2 years for a review of to get an increase in the hack and carriage fees, yet the private operation can do it as ad hoc. We're not going to have a fixed period that every 18 months they get a percentage increase with inflation, for example, or something along those lines.
Okay, we haven't set it down at any point in time that we would review it. We rely on the hackney carriages themselves or the trade representatives come to us. We could be in a position where we could review this every 12 months if that's what the committee if wants to do. We're quite happy to do that. There's a legal process to follow. You know, I would need to bring it to the committee, go out to consultation, come back from consultation, advertise the fees. So there's that legal process to this. So up until now, we've relied on the trade themselves to let us know when they feel that they need for it to be reviewed. But if it is a desire for the committee for it to be done on an annual basis, that we can do that.
Chairman, can I ask to you then? I think the members here gives the thoughts on whether we have an annual review or whether we do it ad hoc as currently.
I think there should be more structure. I agree with Gary. I think there should be more structure to this. So every 12 months.
So I'm for that.
I can say my view.
Yeah.
I think that's quite an onerous bit of work on the team to do that every year. I appreciate that you're thinking of an annual increase, like everything else does with regard to inflation, but you're talking a lot of work, which I'm not sure you get any more money back for. So we've got to absorb that within the cost.
It gets absorbed in the licensing fees eventually. There is a slightly different option if the committee are agreeable with that. We could do it as an informal trade on an annual basis. So we send something informally to the trade to ask them whether they wanted it reviewing or not. And if the desire is that they want it reviewing, we could do it that way. It's an option rather than going into the full legal process of it all. And if the committee wanted me to bring a report back, a small report, just to say that we've done that work, then I could do that as well.
Okay, Councillor Pardee.
You mentioned pricing themselves out and therefore losing fares. I should think that it's the industry that would come to you and ask you to review it because they don't want to be priced down. And I have to say that I've used taxis a couple of times in the past 2 weeks and they're not cheap. So you know, I would say leave it as it is.
Councillor Kerr.
And the sort of a hybrid option, because I think it's good to have a routine for reviewing it, and I think a year is too frequent. I would imagine we could review it every 2 or 3 years. In the meantime, have this informal process that has been proposed, that you suggested, to ensure that in times of high inflation, we can look at it again. So I suppose my proposal would be that we actually routinely structure review this every, say, 3 years, but in the other 2 years, we actually do an informal process, which will enable us to take action if there's been high inflation in the intermediate time. We all hope we won't have high inflation ever again. Who knows?
So just to be clear, you
I know I'm a long way round.
can I just ask what clarity regarding Councillor Kerr?
I was going to talk about that actually.
Yeah. So you're suggesting that they have the informal one, but now you've bolted on 3 years anyway on the end of it. Is that my?
Yeah, and certainly actually structurally do it every 3 years as a formal exercise with all the formality that involves. But in the intervening years, we just do a depth check, if you like, by doing an informal sort of consultation. Not just, as you say, it's just an email out to say, what are your feelings? And that can be reported back to the committee and can allow the committee to bring forward a review if it feels appropriate. I sense it probably won't, but at least will be a chance to do so.
Councillor Parry?
I agree with Councillor Kerr. I think it should be done the way he's talking about it. Can I just say that at the moment my road has been closed for nearly 12 months. Sorry. And most of the people that live in the old people's properties just round the corner from me are really complaining that they're having to pay £7 and £8 to get into town, which is only 2 minutes run. It would be rather nice if the people who are running the taxis, but you know what they're like in Ludlow. They seem to think it's the main thing is to get the money in, and we don't have taxis at night. We only have the ones that you can hire over a period of time. it really, I thought that with the new buses coming in, that we were going to get a chance of people being able to go into town a little bit later. But no, I'm afraid the buses are still running at the same times. It's not altered at all, which is very bad. I mean, these elderly people are really complaining. My road is completely closed. This is the second time this year, and it's going to be closed now until the 8th of November. That is them saying that. That could be longer, it could be up to Christmas. And then the town is going to be dug up. The whole of the town is going to be dug up for new electric cables going in. So that's going to be from January right through to the end of March. It's the elderly people that are suffering in Ludlow, and it's not right. If we could have had a conversation with some of these carriages who might have made it just that little bit cheaper, just to go up a hill, 2 minutes, it charging £7 and £8, it's too much. Thank you.
Okay, so if you can have Mandy clarify that.
Just to make the committee fully aware, Hackney Carriage fare cards are the council sets the fee, but the Hackney Carriage proprietors themselves can charge anything up to the maximum fare. So if members of the public want to negotiate with Hackney Carriage drivers a lower fee up to the maximum of the fare, they can do on an individual basis. And the drivers are actually used to that happening. So that is, you know, something that can happen. The only bit that's set in law is that it can't charge anything over and above what is listed in the fare card.
Right. So they can't charge any more than what's in the fare card?
No, but they can charge anything underneath that to make it more reasonable for their regular customers.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Just a little clarification. With the proposal for the informal contact with the taxi owners, if they do request an increase, you then have to go through the full formal process, do you?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how long does the normal formal process take?
So I've outlined it in this report if you want further details, but generally you get a request for that to for an increase to happen. What we do is we send an informal email out to the trade and give them probably 4 weeks to come back to us. Anybody else puts any sort of recommendations and requests in, we then draw that into a report and bring it to this committee. We then have to go from this committee to a formal consultation, review all the consultation responses, and then bring another formal report back to this committee for it to be taken into effect. So we're talking sort of from between sort of April time this year and to now, sort of, you know, it's sort of that sort of window, March to sort of October. It's that sort of period of time in order to get it out to the formal consultation, review all the information and bring it back to the next committee that's available.
So my understanding from your answer then is that if we do the informal approach, if they don't want an increase, they won't ask for one, so we just carry on as normal. If they do want an increase, you've got to go through the whole thing. Yeah. And if they want an increase anyway, we don't need to approach them informally, they tell us.
Yes.
So I tend to feel that really we should leave the status quo. So my proposal would be that, it's been proposed and seconded, hasn't it?
No, I'm going to withdraw my.
Ah, right. So I would propose that we leave the status quo and that you know, we leave it for the taxi firms themselves to actually approach us if and when they feel they need an increase.
Okay, so you're proposing that. Did you get a formal proposal from Councillor Kerr regarding the proposal?
But I'm happy to withdraw it and go with the proposal that we leave it. I was just worried about an annual process and the resource implications of that. If we're not going for that, I'll withdraw my proposal and sensible will probably support your proposal.
Yeah, I think I'm withdrawing my proposal, Mr. Chairman. I think I didn't realise it's like 6 months to get them to agree a price rise. I thought it was something we did over a 6 or 8 week period. I didn't realise the time constraints. So I withdraw.
So the proposal is to maintain the status quo. We've got a proposer and a seconder. So we have a vote on that then? Yeah. So that's unanimous. So we'll stick with that.
So recommendation agrees.
Right. Yeah. And more than that. So there is a recommendation there that we approve the recommendation. So I'll propose it. Jones, second it. Councillor Lee. So who's in agreement with that? And that's unanimous again. So we go to the item 7, licensing fees and charges 2025 to 26. And again, Mandy's going to give us a report on that.
Thank you, Chair. This time every year I bring this report before this committee. We do a lot of work throughout the year in order to set the fees and charges for the following year. We look at all the renewals that are coming in, all of the costs that's incurred for the processing of the licence, all the on cost that's incurred as well, heating, lighting, buildings, that sort of thing. And we incorporate salaries and everything else in terms of reviewing how much it actually costs to deliver the licensing service, what licence applications can be charged for and which can't. The licences that can't be charged for, those costs are borne by the taxpayer, and the individual licence details are contained in this report as to how we've got to those charges. What we try to do, and what is required in law, is that we try and maintain a cost neutral as much as possible for the licensing service. That is not an in-year thing, that is a rolling programme of cost neutrality. So what that means is we look at the renewals that we're expecting coming in the following year, and we base that on what we actually received in the previous year, to do with actual new applications and the renewals in the previous year. And it's this ongoing rolling programme to try and get some middle ground, to try and make the service itself as cost neutral as possible. We're allowed to charge additional fees within the fee structure in order to offset any previous deficits. But any surpluses that are created within the charging regime, we have to then pay that back to the trade by adjusting the fees in the following year to compensate for any surpluses that are in there. The report that you've got before you, it outlines all of that information and all of the detail for all the different types of licences, and really I'm open to any questions that anyone may have. There's quite a lot of detail in this report.
Couldn't actually see it in the report, but although I'm the councillor for Halskett, because I've had a business based in the town centre for years, people always come up to me with issues, and there's been a few coffee shops owners that have come to see me about new proposed on-street table licences that were about £100 a year and have been put up to £500 a year. And for some of the very small independent coffee shops, that's a huge 5-fold increase. And it's huge. And they were immensely upset about it. And I couldn't get away from it because they were determined to, put their. So I thought I'd raise that here. And one the question is why? Why have we increased? Because trade in the town at the moment is terrible. We're down probably at least 20% on last year. I'm a true independent now because I no longer own a coffee shop myself. But because I used to own one for 26 years, everybody comes to see me when there's problems. And this, I can fully understand it. That's their profit for the month gone. It just seems ridiculous. And I'm hoping they got it wrong, or the officers who sent these charges out has got it wrong. But if it's real, it's crazy in a time when the town is completely blocked off with all this roadworks going on under the railway bridge, and and as a consequence, trade in the town has dropped dramatically. Footfall is down, and the last thing you want is to do this sort of thing. The tables outside. I used to put tables outside not because of necessarily wanting people to sit on them. It just advertised the fact that the coffee shop was open. and this is what a lot of them are saying. They don't really gain any financial benefit from this, but to people walking past, they can see there's a coffee shop open there.
So just to clarify with that, then there are two types of pavement. There's a pavement licence and a pavement permit. So there's two different elements here. Pavement permit is something that we've had for many years, and yes, the price has increased on that one. The pavement licence is something that was brought in during COVID, and it was a temporary measure brought in during COVID to allow premises to have more outside spaces to work with. the central government decided to retain that after the COVID pandemic ceased, and those fees are set by central government and their statutory fees. So I would advise anybody coming to you for a cafe, as an example, with a couple of tables and chairs outside, if they want to go down that route, to apply for a pavement licence, not a pavement permit.
All right.
Councillor Parry.
Same thing. I've got a couple of places that have 2 places, so that's £1,000. I did tell them that I had heard that it was being altered. Somebody told me that they had decided that they were going to bring it back down to nearer the price what it had been before. But I didn't know that there was a licence and a permit. I thought it was all the same thing.
I did.
So how do we get people to find out the proper information? Because that is quite obvious that these people do not know the right information.
Right.
Do they ring you, Mandy, or are your people that are working for you, and you will tell them this?
Yeah, the information is actually on the website, but if they do make contact with the licensing team, the advice will be given depending on what they're asking for and what they want to achieve by what they want to put outside. Because we can have vegetable stalls put outside. It's not restrictive. So it depends what they want to actually have outside. The pavement licence that was brought in by central government was more driven for sort of cafes and pubs. If it's more of a shop, sort of like putting whatever they're selling outside, that's more relevant to pavement permitting. So it just depends what the type of business it is and what they want to apply for. But if they contact the licensing team, they'll give them the right advice based on what they're asking to be put out in front of their premises.
Can I say it's not stopped these people from doing that, except the one that suddenly found out it was going to cost them £1,000 because they've taken the business next door, and that was a flower shop and vegetable shop. So now they've got where they were before, which is round the corner, and they want to sit people. And I think the town council turned it down. Sit people in this little alleyway. It's always taken us quite a long time to get past. But I mean, the thing is, that's the same business, but 2 places to sit. £1,000. Lots of money to try and find £1,000.
I understand. When you're talking about areas outside the premises as well, there's a lot to be taken into consideration to do with pedestrian safety and the amount of pavement that's still left whilst tables and chairs are out. You've got to consider people who are partially sighted, people in wheelchairs, and there's a lot of requirements for areas that are outside that have to be considered and measured. And we inspectors have to actually go out and inspect these premises to measure up exactly how much area they're asking for and how much they're allowing. So there's a lot of work that goes into processing those type of applications, and this is why sometimes they are turned down, because there's not enough pavement area or a pedestrian area outside in order to have what they want to have, and also make sure there's enough pavement for people with disabilities.
And can I just say that I'm glad you mentioned disabled people, because I'm the disabled person for Ludlow. I'm the chairman of the Access Group. We get people who own these places who are very, very abusive. They come out and tell them to clear off. Why are they asking for stuff to be moved? I mean, we know now that people being disabled, and I mean, you are disabled if you've got a stick. But to be abusive like that is disgraceful. And where do they complain to? Who did it complain to? The council? The people who are disabled?
If there's anybody that's so for example, if it's a pavement licence or a pavement permit, and they're the complaint derives from that, then by all means contact licensing and we'll have a word with the premises themselves.
Right.
If it's any other complaints to do with anything else that is not a licensable area, then yes, they can complain to the council, and depending where it is, it'll go to the right department.
Right. Thank you very much for that. I'll take that back to my members. Thank you.
Can I ask one final?
Hold on, there's a queue.
Oh, it's fine.
Councillor Kerr's next.
Are we on table licensing instead?
Hope so. Yes, I think it's the sort of thing that gives the council a very bad reputation, isn't it? Because it can lead to 2 tables next door to each other. One who's looked at the right websites and is in the know and has got a permanent pavement licence. The other one who hasn't, has got a pavement permit and is paying presumably more money. So my question is, why on earth have we created a situation where somebody can get a pavement permit when we know they're eligible for a pavement licence. Why aren't our permit fees the same as the licence fees? It doesn't matter which channel you go down, you would pay the same if you're eligible for a pavement licence.
It's because a pavement licence is a statutory fee set by central government. The pavement permit licence is set by the cost that it costs the council in order to administer it.
But so my question, my resolution is, why are we not charging a pavement permit the same as a licence fee? It's a ludicrous situation where you're saying somebody's applied for a permit, you know fully well that they could have a licence, they just happen not to know that because they're busy trying to run their business, don't know who to ask, don't know which website, they haven't bumped into Jeff in the middle of Shrewsbury, so they haven't had that benefit, and they're going to lose out. And that's appalling, isn't it? So I would say where somebody's eligible for a pavement licence, rather than tell them and have all this complication, all the people phoning you up and all the workload that imposes on you, just say where you're eligible for a pavement licence, the permit fee is the same as the licence, because that's all you need to pay. If it's not eligible for licence, then by all means have a permit fee that's different and reflects, a different level of cost. But where you can get a licence, what is the point? It's just the sort of thing that causes a council reputation to be shattered.
We would give the advice to the members of the public that are applying if they would qualify for a pavement licence to go down the route of applying for a pavement licence and deter them from applying for a pavement permit, which is more expensive.
The licence is the cheaper.
Yes, I think I made a proposal that our permit fees are the same as licence fees.
What you're proposing, Councillor Kerr, is putting up fees. You've got a dearer fee and a cheaper fee, and you want to put a fee that's cheap because that's the relevant one. You want to put it up to the dearer one.
What I'm saying is where you're eligible for a licence, you're not charged the cost at the moment of a permit, you're just charged the cost of the statutory licence for your permit. So it doesn't matter which door you go into, you pay the same cost. Yeah. Because you get to the same place.
The lower figure.
The lower figure, yes. Sorry, thank you. I thought it was clear, but obviously.
And is the licence instead?
Well, it sounds as though you get to the same point. You get to the same end point as having a licence.
So I think next was Councillor Pardy.
And before I start, it says on the miscellaneous licence type, licensing fees on the Shropshire website, that the pavement licence is 500 and the pavement permit is 245. So it's the other way around. Yeah, that the permits are cheaper.
Let me just get the right to do. That's what you said. Council wants cheaper, that's what I thought.
Oh, okay, well, that seems to be. I wasn't aware of any of this, so it's all, that's how I'm being told it.
So which is the cheapest? Sorry, I'm confused now.
So they don't get a licence, get a permit. So the reverse of what we're going to do. Yeah.
Right, good all that.
Well done, Kevin. Thank you.
On the spot. You're on a job, Kevin. Oh, clearly it's ludicrous to have two different costs for the same service, isn't it?
Chair, the question was, in the old days, oh God, when I was on the Central Planning Committee, it was a business would have to apply to go on the street with their furniture. Is that the case now?
So pavement permits are a highways function administered by licensing, but that is permission to be used the old traditional way. Pavement licensing, which is a licensing function, came in during COVID, and it was what central government created for more outside spaces for licensed premises. But pavement permitting has always been there and always been a function. But it's actually a highways function administered by licensing.
But it no longer goes to central planning.
No.
All right, thank you.
What's landing? We'll go to central, because it's not there.
Councillor Anderson, did you want to say anything more?
No, it's clarified now. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Chairman.
Councillor Doge.
Same subject, but a different part, same subject. We've had temporary road closures in Shrewsbury now for the last 3 odd years. Still temporary. The signs still say temporary closures 10 to 4, Saturdays and Sundays. When is temporary going to become permanent? When is it going to become a permanent feature with permanent signage?
You'll need to ask highways.
But then the licence is to yourselves, isn't it, for the pavement licences?
The licenses are, but whether the streets are going to be closed or not, permanent or temporary, is something for highways to decide, because that's about closing the streets.
Okay. All right, cheers.
If I can ask a question then, and this is an overall then, with all the fees for the various different ones we've discussed today, as a department, where are we cost neutral wise or deficit? Because there was a deficit within the first section, and then you've got these fees. When we're thinking about saving money, or at least paying for your department, broadly, where are we overall?
If you will look at Appendix L of the report, it details it all in there for you.
Is that just for these ones, or is that all of it? All the different ones?
This is all the different license types.
Oh, okay. Including taxis?
Yeah, it doesn't include pavement permits because they're the highways function.
Okay. Okay, that's good. So,
That's why I can't find it.
so councillors, have we? Oh,
Yeah.
councillor Dave.
Our fees to neighbouring councils like Telford and Brecon and beyond, just to see, are we on par, or are we more expensive or cheaper, or just?
We do, and there's a whole arrangement of fees that sometimes we're more expensive, sometimes we're on par, sometimes we're slightly cheaper. It just depends on the surrounding local authorities, and we look at all of our sort of neighbouring authorities. But what is important to point out here is how much it costs this local authority to process those applications and administer the licensing regime, and we have to cost that out based on the cost that it is to this authority. Every year we're looking at ways of reducing costs, streamlining processes, and making things more cheaper as possible or more cost effective. And this is part and parcel of the process that we do every year. So yes, we can do benchmarking with other local authorities in the area, but if we benchmark to a cheaper authority and say, okay, we'll set the fees at that, it's costing the taxpayer more and more money in order to administer the licensing service. So in order to make sure the businesses are paying the cost it is, and it's not being put on all the taxpayers, we try and draw that ground where we are trying to be that cost neutral as much as possible.
No, that's another question. Sorry.
Councillor Barkley.
Street trading in Ludlow was done a lot before you started doing it. Do you do the same prices as Ludlow, or have you done your own prices? I remember when you brought it in, because I've been doing this 20 odd years, I think, on and off. But the thing with it is that they still do their own, don't they, in Ludlow? Are there any other towns in this area that do their own street trading?
Sorry.
Oh, that wasn't.
Sorry.
They can tell the corner.
I meant to turn it off.
Yeah. Clarify. Can't remember the exact year, but Shropshire Council have always been responsible for street trading. And Ludlow, many years ago, as you've said, requested an onward delegation for them to manage it themselves.
Yes.
And that delegation has been there for many, many years now, as you've said, and they run it independently. So they set their own fees, their own policy surrounding it, and their own application forms and all of that as part of that process. We have tried numerous times to get other town councils to actually take on that responsibility for their own areas. We've had a little bit of desire here and there to do it. When we go into the detail, they decide it's too onerous from an administrative point of view for the resources they've got at the town council. So they've either, Oswestry was an example, they requested it, we did the delegation, they ran it for a while, decided it was too onerous on them, so handed it back. Really? So there is that option for any of the town councils to take on that responsibility. And us, again, there's a legal process to it, we have to do all of that process, but there is the ability for Shropshire Council to do an onward delegation to the town councils. It's just that when we do the review of the policy to do with the street trading, there's just no desire for the town councils to take it on, because we always give them up that option when we do the consultation for that policy.
Right, thank you for that.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you. I've been on this committee for since the start of the unitary authority, and certainly the team, the licensing team, has always, from these reports, that they don't make an excessive surplus. Frequently, because of the onerous tasks that they have, the licensing fees do have a deficit. But on the whole, I think the team does extraordinarily well to ensure that we don't make either a massive deficit or a massive surplus. And so I'm quite happy to make the proposal we accept the recommendations in agenda item 8 as they stand.
Thank you.
They are quite complex, the recommendations, because first one, 3.1, that you noted, because it's about the statutory one. 3.2 is that we implement it in accordance with the various appendices. And 3.3, that you propose to vary the fees in relation to the drivers in Appendix F. 3.4, that the committee instructs the transactional management and license teams to arrange proposed fees. And 3.5, that it agrees the relevant protected site fees. So that covers all that then.
Yeah, I propose all.
Just one thing, just to make sure everybody's aware of, Appendix F, which is the Hackney carriage and private hire, they go along with all of the rest of the fees, but there's another legal process associated with that, is that we have to do a separate consultation on those fees. So everything will run through, as it says, into the full council reports and go through that procedure. There's a caveat to the taxi and private hire ones, because we're legally bound to consult with those. And I normally do that between January and February each year, so that they come into effect in near to the 1st of April as possible.
Should we not have that as a separate proposal? Because
it's there.
It is within there, but Mike Cressy didn't highlight it. I think that's why Mandy's jumped in. So all those in favour of that proposal then? That's unanimous again then. Thank you. And to the next one, which is the exercise of delegated powers. Mandy's going to give us a report on that.
Thank you, Chair. This report is the standard report that I bring to this committee every quarter, every time we meet, and it just gives you an outline of all the licences that's been processed during roughly the previous quarter, depending on where the committee meetings fall, and it just lists them really. And so have you, anyone of you got any questions about any of those types of licences or the volumes that we've been getting, please let me know. I'm open to questions. If not, it's just for noting.
Councillor Birch.
On the private hire licences, Wolverhampton City Council do it as a business. Most of the drivers go there because it's cheaper, it's more efficient. They can get their car checked and passed out within 2 days. Shropshire Council take between 4 and 6 weeks, I'm told. Is there any reason for that?
I'm not sure where the source of your information has come from, but that's not actually correct. There was a point in time back in 2015 when the deregulation legislation came in, which allows private hire vehicles to on operators to apply for out of area licences and operate in different areas. Yes, there was a sort of big surge of applications that went over to Wolverhampton from every local authority up and down the country, because they were in a position where they could process licences really quickly. They had online applications and all of that sort of stuff. What we've seen is that happened for a few years, and what we've seen is that it's doing a U-turn now, and those people are stopping applying for Wolverhampton, and in the droves that they were, because they've got so big that actually processing times are a lot worse than ours. We average about 4 weeks for a drive. Yeah, so. It was a problem. It was an issue at the time, 2015 to sort of 2016, 17, and then it is actually done sort of a U-turn, and they've as the time has gone, they've gradually come back. So we see definitely an increase year on year of actual live licences and new licence applications coming along.
Mr. Jones.
Yeah, so I think I'm right as well in thinking that when it all started off and Wolverhampton was so much cheaper, it was because their fees didn't include all the charges. That our fees actually at the time included all the charges, whereas their taxi, their private hire vehicle drivers and things were having to pay additional fees on top. It didn't make it any cheaper in the long run.
You're correct. So the fee structure that Wolverhampton had is that they required their applicants, so taking a driver as an example, to do a DBS certificate. They had to pay for that themselves before they started to apply. Any medical forms that they had to fill in, they had to go to the GPs and get those medical forms filled in, and bear the costs themselves outside of any licence application. And when they got all the detail, the information that they needed in all those forms, they then went to the local authority with the application, and all they got charged was a minimal administration fee. So when you look at the total fee that we're charging at that time as the licence fee for the administration of that application, the driver had already paid a lot of upfront costs, whereas at that time and still now, we incorporate all of that into the licence fee and we help them through the process.
Councillor Pardy?
I know it's not the scrutiny committee, but at the bottom, the conclusions, you say the workload for the team has continued to be high. Now with the loss of jobs, is that going to get higher? Have you lost anybody in the department?
Not through VR. We're just starting to see a shift in people deciding to look for other opportunities. So I'm not going to say that we're in a perfect position at the moment, but from a VR point of view, no, we haven't lost any. We are putting through to the workforce board requests for all the people, because we're a statutory function, for any officers that are leaving to be replaced. But no, we've had no VRs, but any natural sort of wastage of officers, we are requesting that they be replaced because of the statutory service and meeting the statutory requirements for the organisation.
Councillor
A quick one. Anyway. Is the street collection the rag and bone men that go round?
No.
So they don't have to apply for a licence to come round and collect?
So you're talking about a scrap metal collector?
Well, he's a rag and bone man as far as I'm concerned. He shouts.
There are a separate set of fees for scrap metal dealers and scrap metal collectors in the appendices.
I wondered it because he doesn't belong to the scrap metal dealer. He's nothing to do with him, I've asked.
Street collections is to do with charitable
right.
selections in the street.
So it's what the bags that come through your door, that is.
They're house-to-house collections.
Right. So does the rag and bone men not have to pay anything then?
Is that when you're referring to a rag and bone man, what are they collecting?
They come round for anything that's metal.
Yes,
they
so
have
scrap metal
loudspeakers that shouts.
Yeah, there's a scrap. They should be under the Scrap Metal Dealers Act, in which they should have a collector's licence.
I bet they don't.
If you'd like to provide me with the registration number of the vehicle or any details, then we'll look into it.
If you collect cars and all sorts of things.
Yes, so it's under the Scrap Metal Dealers Act.
Right, thank you.
I think that's everybody now, so we move on to the recommendations, and it's quite simple on this one. We've just got to note the report. So, proposer, Councillor Towers, Councillor Jones. We all note that and accept the proposal. Yep, that's unanimous again then, thank you. So that moves us on to the date of the next meeting. For the Strategic Licence Committee will be held on Wednesday the 11th of December this year at 10 AM. I think that concludes everything. Thank you very much everybody for coming along. Wait, thank you.